Welcome to our session on migrating the Princeton University Press website from God knows what to Drupal 8, and taking the sunny afternoon to be here. My name is Alex Dergachev. I think most of you at Drupal Con Montreal know me. I'm speaking mostly to the video, but so I've been doing Drupal for 10 years. I run Evolving Web. Very community-oriented company. Last year at Drupal Con Baltimore, we paid a couple $1,000s for the right to hand out flyers, but we thought we'd twist that up a bit and we handed out flowers. It was during this Drupal crisis, with a lot of controversy during that thing, and it was really appreciated. And of course, we at Evolving Web have gone to 10 years worth of Drupal Con, so we're friends with people on both sides of the controversy. So we like to think it helped bring things together, and the Drupal Thanks campaign worked out really well. Our company, it just turned 10 last year. We're a big sponsor and organizer and co-organizer of Drupal Con Montreal. We go to lots of Drupal camps all over the Northeast. Hi, Nick. And our team is here. It's actually grown a lot. So some of these are just friends, but now our team is even bigger than that. Every Monday night we host a work late party at our office in Old Montreal. So you guys are welcome to bring a laptop and work on your side projects with cool Evolving Web and friends. This Monday night, once a month, we are actually hosting the UX Montreal meetup. It's about 30 to 50 people. Design, developer, business, and the format is very nice. It's a 5-minute show and tell about something you designed, and then the room goes and gives feedback. And it's about half freelancers, so it's a really great way to build your freelancer network and collaborate. So we at Evolving Web, we've been doing Drupal for 10 years. We've had a chance to work with some pretty big clients over the years. So tons of work for McGill. Not for Concordia though. I don't know why. Tons of work for McGill. This year we did a project for Western Digital, developer portal. We're doing some Quebec government stuff, which is very exciting for me. Some years ago we did a major Drupal portal for public works called buyandSell.gc.ca. It's a very major government website. We have a little bit of everything. Where people are using Drupal, they probably know us. This presentation is about what we did last summer. So the project that started about a year ago and dragged out, continued, whatever word you want to use, for about 5-6 months plus maintenance. So it's for Princeton University Press. Who here in the room has heard of them? All right, so it's a publishing house. Don't be confused with Princeton University, which is technically a separate, much larger and legal entity. Because Princeton, as a university, is one of the most famous universities in the world. It's got like some sort of, I don't know how many billions dollars of endowment, and this Princeton University Press is a non-profit, academically oriented publishing house that's been around for about 120 years. That's associated with the university. Their office is on campus. It was originally set up to print the Princeton student newspaper, 120 years ago, but ever since then, they've become one of the biggest names in the academic publishing world. So I'm probably thinking of Oxford University Press, MIT Press, Chicago Press, and many others, Cambridge University Press. So this is they're not a publishing house like Simon & Schuster or Random House. They're like much more niche, but at the same time, they're one of the biggest names in that subspace. They have a couple hundred employees. They have this beautiful building in the middle of campus. They had this amazing tree that was just cut down this year because it was a structural risk, but they planted a new tree. It's also nice. What's very impressive is the brand. I mean, Princeton University Press is a very prestigious organization, although their old website wouldn't reflect that much. What's very impressive is the kind of creative input that they have for the covers, that to actually promote the authors. They do some very exciting things. So here are some screenshots of their recent books. As you see, they're often by professors, but they're often also targeted at the general audience. So they often have very famous professors write and publish books for the general audience. They actually were the publication house associated with all the papers of Einstein as well, back 67 years ago. And actually, one of their authors last year won the Nobel Prize for Physics. So that was kind of a big deal going on when we were launching the project. So just to give you a sense of who the client is and the pedigree that they have and the brand that they have. And so it's kind of ironic that a client that whose logo was designed by the same New York marketing agency that did the NBC Peacock logo. This is the standards that they have. And yet this is what their website looked like for the last 15 years. It was something that they knew it was time to redo. And the challenge, of course, was a big redesign, rebranding, modernization effort. And at the same time, it was the reality that this was a major IT project as well, because their old website consisted of a bunch of Visual Basic scripts embedded inside of a Microsoft Access database, which initially fed all of its data from Microsoft Access, and then as they grew over the last 15, 20 years, it was MS SQL Server database that Access would connect to remotely, which was synchronized to an ERP database that was actually managing all the publication workflow. But as far as the website was concerned, everything was being funneled through these VB scripts, which were basically like a handwritten static site generator, because they would connect, gather all the data from their 30 or 50 tables, and feed that into static HTML files. And it looked like this. As you can imagine, it was not responsive, it was not usable, but it was very fast loading because it was static HTML. So that was nice. Okay, we thought at Evolving Web, this is going to be a walk in the park kind of project. I mean, it's a static website. They got hardly any dynamic functionality. What could be challenging about it? We'll finish it in a month or two. But the catch is they have, in publication, 10,000 books. They have considerably more than that in their back catalog as well. But 10,000 books that they're listing on their website. And of course, for each book, they have pages that are related to testimonies or prizes and awards and sample chapters and table of contents. So on average, each book has 4 reviews. So we have a table of 40,000 records of reviews. So maybe 100 to 100-something thousand records in all. And this stuff changes in dribs and drabs, usually at the end of a semester. But the site's got to be up to date. So the little catch is they needed a sync job every night to synchronize 100,000 records or something like that. Also, as if that's not enough, this static HTML behemoth of a website, well, partly static, right? Because partly was generated and partly was just copied and pasted and edited for all the little pages, has been there for 15 years or 20 years or something crazy. And so can you imagine how many back pages will accumulate when you have a webmaster working on things, and every time an author calls them and say, we have to make an announcement, I won the Nobel Prize or this, or they have a new initiative or a new program. So they have a lot of pages that nobody even knew existed, but were dumped in some sort of a web drive, on their Windows box that was accessible by shared folder to the webmaster and the team, and was being publicly served. And so when we were told, hey guys, just move all of this to Drupal, turns out there was a little bit more to move than we bargained for. By the way, this is an actual picture of their boardroom with their libraries. It's very beautiful and impressive. So when we came in, it was right after Drupal Con Baltimore, so the flowers thing is appropriate because I didn't even stop in Montreal. I went straight up there. We had to do a scoping exercise, and we had to say, well, what do you actually need us to do? Can't do it all, especially in your very limited budget, because they're a nonprofit, don't have the same endowment as Princeton has that they can dip into. And what can we do that you need right now? So we asked some questions related to who are the stakeholders, get a better understanding of the marketing team, the leadership director level stuff, the IT team, and the power dynamics between the different groups. Well, an organization that's this important and this has this much history, sub-organizations form, and we were brought in, to be specific, by the IT group. So our main job was to make the IT group happy. But of course, the marketing people had different ideas of what they wanted from the website, and we did our best to try to make everyone happy. And of course, somewhere along the lines are users, so we also, we wanted to make the user happy, because when Evolving Web does a project, we want people who visit the project and say, this is good work. Yeah, so it was a lot of challenges in this regard. So through this process, the compromise or the direction that emerged was that, look, we have serious problems with our workflow right now because these VB scripts that run on somebody's laptop, if you want to rebuild the whole site, take like 10 hours to run. And so they have they copied and pasted, and they have a version of the same scripts with different file names. There's no Git because it's all embedded in Visual Basic for applications inside of an Access database. But they had the name with prefixes or postfixes to just update a single book. When an author calls to complain that there's a typo in that book, they'll update the HTML just for that. When sometimes they need to have a sale on, and they need to update all the prices of all the books by 10% because it's a spring sale. And so that takes 20 hours to run, and sometimes it's buggy. And oftentimes for these sales, what they would do is they would just kind of edit the script, the main script. They would edit it and run it again, and then see if they generate HTML was what they wanted. And then they would copy and paste that generated HTML over the files in the web drive. And this worked fine except for the 20 or 50 or 100 books that it bugged out on or had special requirements, so then they would have to manually edit or sync those changes. Again, there's no Git, even for the generated HTML, so the webmaster had a list of books to remember to check after this 10-hour process ran. So, first of all, this is clearly a case, I think static site generators are sexy. You guys probably heard about them, you're probably thinking, should I be using Drupal for my next mini project, or for 5 pages, or should I be using something simpler? Good thought. But clearly, when you've got a database of 100,000 something records and a static site build process that takes a day to run, something is broken. I mean, you should not be doing that. Perfect fit for Drupal. So the first thing was to get them onto a platform where they can fix bugs on, they can evolve. That wasn't created by the director of web or technology who retired 8 years ago, or I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. Second goal was to modernize the front end and make it responsive. So the interesting compromise there was, no, the marketing and the creative group are going to have a multi-year exercise to define the new brand guidelines and the new look and feel and the new digital strategy. Evolving web, as much as we'd love to be involved in that, that was not going to happen in 2017 and 2018. That would only start as a process in 2018 and would take a very long time. So what we needed to do is we needed to change as little as possible not to undercut that process. We can't go and build a site that looks great without consulting the creative and marketing group. But at the same time, in 2017 or 2018, we can't really keep the look and feel that you guys just saw on the previous slide either. So my negotiating angle there was, well, you say you needed to be responsive. Well, did you know it'll actually cost a lot more to maintain pixel perfect parity, of that look and feel and make it work on mobile? Much better to use the Bootstrap theme and start with what that gives you and inherit your fonts, your colors, your layout, every piece of content that's on the homepage. It'll still stay there. That's not a decision we can make without the big committee, but at least we can make it look modern and we can make it look not broken and we can make it responsive. So that was the compromise that in the end everyone was very happy with, and I'm happy I pushed hard to do it. So our job as technicians on this project was to get them on the right platform and solve those technical challenges and the legacy debt. Here we have Alexandre, who I was talking to over lunch, who did a big Drupal 6 to Drupal 8 migration and talked about how many wonderful content debt and technical debt you uncover when you're forced to migrate a multi-year project from one platform to another, and you're the guy who has to clean up all the crap that's found under the rug. So this was really a lot of that. So and I'm happy to report, while it was not easy at all for our team or our company, the project was very successful, and we set them up in a great thing that I'm showing you now, and set up their redesign exercise that they're doing in 2018-19 on a really amazing platform. So we started with a technical audit of the current site, a content audit, because like I said, there was tens of thousands of static HTML pages that nobody knew what they did. We did a standard Drupal build out. We did a responsive design and UX for just 2 pages, the home page and the book page, because everything really lives off the book page. All the other pages were kind of static pages that we just copied and pasted the blobs of HTML in and let them clean them up. Because, I mean, it was just all static HTML after all for all the other stuff. The scripts produced, and there was a couple of views, that we designed and built out that produced the listings of books and then search. Then the biggest job was figuring out how to import all these records. I don't know, here are 50,000, at some point it was 100,000, I don't know. So importing many tens of thousands of records and around 8 to 10,000 books, and set up a nightly sync. Drupal 8 was a great fit because it had all this flexibility in information architecture. It modeled what they had perfectly well, and it could easily evolve to whatever they'll need. So it didn't require a lot of custom development on that side, just some site building and configuration. So if those content strategists who will come in this year and work through all that, or doing it now, I hope, then we won't be throwing away our work, because our work was cleanup, migration, and making things consistent. So that's all still there, and if you need to rerun our migration but with different destination field structure, great, no problem. Everything is glued around the book content type, and we added, of course, an author content type and then like 30 paragraph types or something. We modeled their integration with their 2 different e-commerce platforms, one by Wiley, one by another publisher. I'm sorry, I forget which one. One for Europe and one for North America, basically. We made sure that the new site was SEO friendly. I mean, Drupal out of the box does great, and we added some meta tags and made sure that the headings were correct. Accessibility wasn't a requirement, but at Evolving Web we always keep it in mind. There were some feeds that Amazon gets that we made sure were still consistent. All the distributors of their books need to consume as an XML feed. And we modeled their very basic search. We copied it as a views exposed search, and down the road it should be solid. 80% of our time was spent doing content synchronization, which we use the Migrate module for, which is you guys are all familiar with the Migrate module here. It's a Migrate framework, I guess. It's the way to import data into Drupal. You use YAML files, which are like JSON files or XML files, so it's not PHP code, to define the mapping of source fields in your external database or your whatever data source you have, and your Drupal destination information architecture, like what are the content types, what are the fields. So a semi-developer or a site builder can actually maintain this, or a project manager can maintain it and run a drush command to run it again and again and see the results and revert it. So the Drupal Migrate framework is great, and you should be using it for all your, it's the community embrace way, so we're using it for all your migration and synchronization jobs. And of course we needed to make sure that going forward, the content editorial team felt empowered, that they didn't have to rely on a webmaster who knew the ins and outs of these VB scripts to make minor modifications. You want to add a new block? You got a new block. You want to add a new landing page? You got a new landing page. And of course, Princeton University Press is part of the Princeton community, which has embraced Drupal hook, line, and sinker, I think is the expression. So it was great that they can leverage their support of the community. So how do we scope it out? The actual technical stuff. We were wondering, are we going to do a one-time migration? Yes, at first. Then we have to do continuous sync. Where were the data going to come from? Because it lived in these several upstream data sources. Are we going to pull it from VB, from MySQL, from this upstream source, from the XML feed that they were generating for Amazon, which had all the same kind of data, and we're going to do directly or through an intermediate format like comment separated values. And what data do we actually need to keep? Because I have 20 years worth of fields, but maybe that author has already died who demanded that his prize was listed as a special field in that database structure. So let's clean that up. So what we found was I got some stats here: 9,000 books, 15,000 related pages related to Einstein and his legacy. For each book, there's quotes, sample chapters, table of contents, yada yada yada. I don't know why reviews aren't here. And 18,000 random, semi-generated, semi-static pages related to listings and ancillary materials. There was 30 to 50 scripts in VB Access. I already told you it took a long time to run. A lot of code duplication, a lot of code that was broken and nobody understood this section of it. I mean, each of these scripts could have been, aside from duplication, could have been 100 lines of code, could have been 2,000, 5,000 lines of code. So these were hairy VB scripts. My first programming language, by the way, was VB when I learned for Microsoft Access back in 2006 or something. So it's kind of cool to see it again. There's these special books that I told you were edited in Dreamweaver by hand. and this workflow of generating the static HTML, manually copying it over to the W drive. Yeah, did I say 2,000? I meant to say 5 to 10K. The workflow that existed when we started was this upstream SQL server, my MS SQL server database, VB script that then generate dynamic and HTML and for pages and for the listings and for the works, the books. There was a ton of static HTML content and also a lot of ancillary stuff like PDFs, images, and so on. They actually had Photoshop scripts to manage the resizing of different thumbnails for the book cover images, so just to give you a sense of how they managed to do it. Our workflow now, we decided, for better or worse, was we export everything out of Biblio, SQL Server, that's what we're calling Biblio, into CSV. Why? Because we could hone down to just the data that the website needed in a clear format. It wasn't normalized necessarily, so it wasn't the best format, it wasn't the cleanest format, but at least it was very easy to scope and maintain. And then we knew that they were actually going to switch their upstream system from the SQL Server-based one to something called Virtue Sales, like an ERP for publishers. And great, because Virtue Sales has a reporting tool that could generate CSVs, so their job was to give us the same reports, the same CSVs, column for column, and then our scripts would have to have minimum modification. So we gave them a 20-line PowerShell script that connected to their SQL Server database and generated these lovely CSVs, and of course 30 or whatever queries embedded in it for each table that became a CSV file. Then we wrote a bunch of migrations for each one of these things, mostly becoming either works, digital works, authors, or any of those paragraph entity types that we ended up associating with works. This would be a nightly sync. We would have a separate process for images. So images, we still told them keep them on a static FTP accessible or SFTP accessible drive, and our custom migration, part of the Drupal Migrate framework, will connect over SFTP to this drive, look at the timestamps, look at all the new images, and sync that in. That was a lot of work to get it, because out of the box, Drupal didn't do what we needed, but we got it to work. And of course, we told them, look, do your resizing however you want. We're not going to import TIFFs, because it's a publishing house. They use TIFFs that are 20 megabytes a cover. Give us 1 megabyte JPEGs, and that's going to be Drupal source, and we'll resize it down from there. So that was the comp on 1 or 2 megabytes, something like big enough for us. So Drupal doesn't have too much stuff it doesn't need, but it handles all the dynamic resizing, all its different image formats internally, which was a great win because you don't have to maintain anymore. It's all automatic. We used views for the listings instead, and we did a one-time import, semi-manual, semi-scripted, using migration for the static pages, but then still required a ton of cleanup, that some of which we did for the top 100 pages or something, and the rest we told the content team to do over the summer. Any questions on this part? Okay. So I told you everything hangs around books. This is the simplified diagram that my partner Suzanne said you can't include the actual diagram of all the crazy fields we had. Your audience will be horrified. So just to show you how many paragraph types there are. There's reviews, chapters, interviews, illustrations. There's fields on the book itself, and there's like 20, I don't know. And then there's editions, which are like digital, like when you have multiple ebooks, softcover, hardcover, you've been on Amazon, you know this. Contributor are the illustrator, editor, managing editor. They manage all of that logic in the publishing world for the title of each person associated with the book, so we had to have a custom entity type for that. And of course, there's several taxonomies involved for subjects and subsubjects. Out of the 75 pages of static HTML files that we had to comb through, turns out 53, I don't know, it took us like a week, but 54,000 should just be, or copied of old pages, or some ancillary materials of a book that's not even published anymore. So we just threw that out. 20,000 were generated, and so our Drupal pages would replace those. And there were still 2,500 pages to keep. And like I said, we focused on cleaning up the top 50 to 100 and let the client's team work through the back catalog. We created these lovely Excel spreadsheets. This one is of all the, let's see, what is this? Of all the folders containing static HTML and whether we should delete them, and comments and notes and back and forth. In the end, this is a huge mistake. I should have just descoped it and saved myself, $20,000 of unpaid work. But we thought it was going to be easy. So don't make our mistake, please. Next, and then I had screenshots of similar Excel spreadsheets of every content type of every I should say, database table and all their fields to figure out which ones are actually used. Only maybe a third of them were actually used on the website, to whittle all down, find sample data, feed that to our designer, all that. The implementation itself, so we achieved a homepage that looks similar enough not to annoy anyone, and yet at the same time it's clearly a modern, responsive page that looks like a website that could have been built in anywhere between 2013 and 2018. So I think that was a fair compromise. We got rid of the left menu because I don't know, just the vertical menu in 2017 is unacceptable. We kept all the same stuff. We gave them a standardized header and a footer. We suppressed, like little tweaks, we suppressed the search fields, which were multiple, into a little like expanding area when you click on the little search bar. So a little thing like that made all the difference. And it's clean. People are happy. It looks like a website I'm not going to win any design awards for, but no. But at the same time, I think when the new director came on board around the time of the launch, because the whole project was done before she came on board, and you know, what does she look at? She looks at the homepage. She's like, oh, okay. I see you guys spent some money and you have a nice looking site. Good job. So it's ironic that the thing that they said they didn't want to do, any improvements on the visual, was the thing that they were complimented on. So like I mentioned, I changed it to a drop-down menu of several layers. The book pages, I didn't show you a screenshot of the old book page, but it's worthwhile sharing that they wanted everything above the fold. And you know what happens when everything is above the fold? So we said, how about we just make it look like Amazon, but cleaner with your fields. So that's what we did. It looks reasonable. We had some collapsible sections, like that are very long. The migration was 80% of our work. We had to do special coding for inconsistency and error checking. We had to support nightly sync and also manual updates. And we had to also remove books that are removed in the data source, which Drupal Migrate unfortunately doesn't do out of the box. So that took some custom development. We ended up creating a single migration for every one of those paragraph types on the main thing. So here's a screenshot of that. We wrote, maybe 10,000 lines of custom code related to this, maybe 5. We had a multi-CSV join module that could theoretically be contributed back, but the realities of running a small business, because the works table consisted of many CSVs, and we needed to pull that into one migration. And Drupal Migrate CSV plugin handles one CSV at a time. So we came up with an extension to a source that's a multi-CSV. So that was quite interesting. We handled deletion. We did a lot of experimentation with different methods of checking for updated, what was actually updated, so we only pull in extra stuff. And the full migration takes still 10 hours to run, but incrementally, it's supposed to take 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 30 seconds, depending on how many books they managed to change that night. With enough, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we found that still because of mistakes we might have made, and also because of how things turn out. For example, MS SQL, when you export CSVs, unlike MySQL, it doesn't default by any sort except random unless you specify. MySQL sorts by primary key by default. So the source data was always changing because it was always in random order. So things like this really tripped us up and made us do giant migrations again and again when no data changed or hardly any data changed, and we were really confused about it. So we spent a bunch of time figuring that out. We also hit limits. We deployed on Pantheon, and they had a 3-minute limitation for their cron jobs, and it should have been 30 records change, only 5 seconds worth of migration. So why the hell is it taking 10 minutes or 100 minutes to do it? And there's many reasons. There was encoding problems, of course, because it's a Microsoft shop and we're pulling into Linux. And there's lots and lots and lots of inconsistent and crafty data. I'm proud to say we didn't. So Drupal people love to share modules. When I started doing Drupal 10 years ago, at every meetup, oh yeah, what modules are you guys using? Well, I guess I'm proud to say what modules we're not using, or rather, how little modules we're using. Everything you see here is arguably should be part of core. This is really, we use Drupal core. We wrote custom code when only because the source data and its environment needed it. We use the building block modules that extend core in the right way. We're not going crazy rebuilding Facebook using organic groups with all kinds of crazy access control. We're experienced Drupal developers who know what's a good, well-supported module that does exactly what we need. We'll use those. And then if you need to write 20 lines of custom code to bridge a gap, we'll do that. As you see, there's a lot of fields we have to migrate in. By the way, I should say the CSV approach is great. It saved our ass, but it was also a huge mistake too. We should have pulled it from them on CSV like we did, and then for us, we should have had a first step to import it into MySQL tables, because then we could have used joins and all this stuff and saved ourselves a lot of trouble. And at the end, it was a slower import as a result. We had some interesting creative approaches to what to do with all these legacy assets that nobody knows if they want to keep them or not. So we made a new domain, assets.press.princeton.edu. We put all the old files there, and we set up Apache rewrite rules that says if somebody's linking to a file that doesn't exist in the CMS, check for it on that domain and redirect there, and then only give a 404 in that case. So that was a crafty way of not having Evolving Web to audit all their, 10,000 or more PDFs and stuff. Static HTML, I talked about this. Dynamic listing, so a bunch of stuff that was sort of being generated should really just be views. So that worked out really well. So what did we achieve? We gave them a stable, secure, and maintainable platform, a good enough look and feel that will make everyone happy with the progress, and also did not steal the momentum for their multi-$100,000 design exercise that they're doing. I mean, just the design. So, and Evolving Web has a design practice that we've been building in parallel to this, but we're not quite big enough to do NBC Peacock logo level stuff. So I'll brag about that next year. It's reasonably good UX. We pulled this off in about 5-6 months. So we made a lot of improvements just by being involved. The SEO was better because the static HTML was not following any best practices. Often Amazon was being ranked above the canonical source of the book. I mean, it's kind of silly. So hopefully that'll improve. The content is easy to update with the WYSIWYG. There's no more Photoshop scripts for image resizing. The navigation is understandable. And after 3 or 4 months of performance optimizations, that removed 90%, 3 or 4 times from our sync speed. It's got a reliable sync. So I'm happy to say we're delivering that in a good spot. What do we do to pull this off? So we host it on Pantheon. The sysadmin that they have, who's been hosting their legacy stuff, is not a Linux guy. He's a Windows guy. He's also their catch-all sysadmin for all IT needs in the organization. He's not an expert in hosting high performance, high traffic Drupal websites. I forgot to mention, I think they have 500,000 views a month, page views a month. So this is a major organization with many books and 100 years of history and a lot of traffic. So Pantheon was a good platform for that because they're very budget conscious, and to be honest, at the time Pantheon was a lot cheaper than Acquia. Now actually Pantheon's increased their prices this year, so they're kind of moving towards the Acquia pricing zone. So, the other thing that I kind of so I love the fact that the client was independent. We deployed it on Pantheon, but the client owns this thing. Any Drupal shop they'll hire will be able to take it over. So it's really the right platform for a client. If you guys are ever hosting something for a client on behalf of clients, you're doing yourself a favor because you're getting client lock-in, but you're not doing them a favor. And we're too small to care, so we were happy to enable our clients. We used Docker for a development environment, which allowed all our development team to be all synced and use the best tools that we've set up over the years in the workflow. Of course, we don't use Basecamp for coordination. We use Redmine internally. It's a kind of Jira-like open source project management tool. But clients, they never go into Redmine. That's for our devs. That's for our time tracking. That's for our wiki and all this internal history. Clients go into Basecamp, and we use that as a little mini project management to-do list tool to keep track of everything and send out emails. It's very nice. We did a little bit of audit using SiteImprove. You guys ever heard of that? So it's a crawler. It's quite expensive. If you're buying Acquia, you can afford it, but if you can't afford Acquia, maybe not. It's a crawler that goes in and looks for broken links, accessibility problems, PDFs that are under-optimized, or images that are 5 megabytes in size, spelling errors, missing copyright symbols. Basically, if you have a giant site with a lot of content, with a lot of problems in that content, a tool like this is essential. So I didn't pitch them yet, or I didn't succeed in pitching yet to get a subscription, but our other clients use this, and almost every university out there either has or has had a subscription to this thing. And it's really, right now it's really big for accessibility, because if you have a ton of content and you need to magically be accessible, how are you going to change? It takes years to fix it. So you need a tool like this that'll keep track of all of this and has a workflow for checking things off and showing you the improvements you make. We use Blackfire for PHP performance auditing. The developers here? I know at least 2.5. And so we use Blackfire. Instead of XHProf. It's a modern, not open source, but partly open source and still premium, so free with a premium model of XHProf. Much better flow, much better user interface. And like I said, thanks to this tool, we were able to fix all our performance problems. It still took many weeks of work, but this was really some of the hardest thing I've done, and it's an amazing tool. We have an internal tool called SiteDiff that crawls and compares two sites one to another to make sure you don't miss anything in your migration. And that's about it. So continuing their Drupal journey, they are continuing with their rebranding strategy. They will have to do a lot more front-end development than we manage in this phase. They will still have to tackle all the accessibility, especially of the content. And internally, they have to build up their Drupal expertise. They have to continue to clean up all this content. I mean, it's safe to say that if it took us 5 months to move all this stuff over, it'll take them a multiple of that to go through it all and clean it up. Like, you know, it's a big thing, and they have other priorities. So this was the project. I have an out-of-date upcoming Drupal trainings slide. Sorry for that, but we have some trainings coming up in Montreal and Toronto. And just subscribe to the Evolving Web newsletter if you guys are interested in our training program. And in fact, we got a relationship with Princeton because of the content strategy training that we had done on Drupal Camp, New Jersey, which was directly adjacent to the Princeton. So yeah, thanks so much. That's my presentation. I'm open to your question.
What did your team needed to learn to fix the problem that you face, like on the spot, like when you before that you pitched for this project?
Why? Right. That's a great question. So like I said, most of the technical complexity was knowing the Drupal Migrate framework and its limitations and being able to extend it. So it was nice that during the first couple of months of the project, we still had access to our lead dev, who unfortunately, Dave Vasilevsky, some of you met, who left around that time to go work for Stripe, the payment processing company. But he was able to set up the architecture for that. And then our developer Jigar became, throughout the course of this project, another world-class expert in Drupal Migrate. So with that much complexity, so we contributed some patches back to Migrate Core, and we really found out more about ins and outs of migrating. Again, we've done similar complex projects in Migrate, but a new developer found out the hard way, I guess you could say. The other thing is this giant content audit is poorly scoped. The client did not have internal communications or understanding of the scope of the work. I mean, their web people did, but maybe not their IT people or their design people. And us, we kind of had to come in and try to explain to them, this is what we are finding, this is what we see. Of course, we were doing this in the middle of the project, or at the start, but in the middle. And so the budget expectations and schedule was already set. So, you know, we didn't stop working, but at the same time, it was very tense for everyone because we were just like, hey, this is so much more work than you guys ever realized or ever let us on, because we only found out after we started. So I think we became much more adept at content audits, content strategy, and negotiating with clients about what's in scope in them. But on the other hand, in terms of scope creep, there was very little, because they were just so happy to get their existing site moved over to Drupal 8. They didn't come to us and demand 50 new things. So I want to say, while this was a challenging project in that regard, it's definitely not a challenging project in terms of the client was greedy and wanted everything. It was more of a client didn't really understand, as an organization, what they were dealing with. But they were quite reasonable and helpful, actually, for trying to scope it as best as possible. Any other technical questions? This is a less technical version that I did before, so feel free to need some technical stuff and I'll maybe talk about it.
In terms of caching, did you use, I didn't see on the module, country module, did you use the HCache module, or you did everything that's in Varnish?
I believe we just turned on page caching. We had Redis. but it's just page cache on whatever Pantheon does, which I believe they use Varnish, but I'm not even sure anymore. But this the caching is very important because they have so many pages, and so and they're so aggressively indexed by Google. The site will easily go down. But it was also very nice to be on a premium plan in Pantheon, so they kind of handle the scalability problems, which surely happen. And it was a very pleasant surprise that we never had the site go down or be unusually slow. Everything was fine, despite very reasonably high level of traffic. All right. Well, I think I'm good for time. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
And yeah.